Hello and welcome to episode 107 of the WP Café show with me, Keith Devon, and my co-host, Mark Wilkinson. WP Café is the show where we talk about WordPress development and business things, typically what we've been up to in our development struggles and solutions and things like that. You can follow us live here on YouTube. Thanks for joining us today. If you are live with us today, please do consider subscribing and liking the video if you're watching along. And as always, we love to get your comments. Say hello, let us know where you're from, ask any questions and stuff like that. You can also find us on all the socials. We're on X, we're on Blue. Or no, we're not on Blue Sky yet.
Yes, we're on Blue Sky.
We're on Blue Sky as WP Café. I didn't know that, Mark. Well done. We also have a website, wpcafe.show, and you can find us as a podcast anywhere you get your podcast. Just search for WP Café. Today, we've got a few things to talk about. Let me find my list. Bits and pieces, mainly kind of the progress with our project, our full site editing project, how that's going, some of the new challenges and things that we found workarounds for. We've got some fun stuff in there. We've kind of just briefly talk about PDFs and what the point of those are these days on websites. We're going to talk about patterns versus styles versus variations, something I think we've touched on before, possibly last year, but it reared its head again, and some interesting things around which of those systems to use whenever you're creating FSE websites in WordPress. But first, Mark, how has your week been this week?
Busy, really busy. This full site editing project is kind of ramping up to a crescendo of go live.
Yeah.
Which is penciled for the 9th of December, I think that is. That was
Yeah.
a Friday, I think.
Scary.
So yeah, it's been busy just catching up with all that and smashing bugs and finishing tickets off and, you know, getting through the sort of last bits of it. It's that all the content's been added, which is like massive amount of work from both the client and from us as well. I've added all blog posts and been going on with the galleries and stuff, fixing the server and all sorts of stuff. Yeah, it's been a busy week. But it's been fun. It's been good.
Yeah. Ooh, fun. Interesting. Yeah. Interesting word to describe building with the block editor. I think I'd sort of agree in large parts. For me, again, I've had another week of doing the things that I generally really like to do, which is turning kind of creative ideas into real websites. The workflow is slightly different these days than it used to be, and maybe not ideal in some ways, but it has it's created new opportunities, it's created new challenges, and I think I'm in a pretty good mindset with it all at the moment. Still frustrations, still like lots of frustrations, and still lots of times when I feel like things are just a little bit hacky. Like this is just everything feels a little bit suboptimal in a new way, especially from that kind of content management, like reusable, extensible, like just all that stuff that we really, I don't know, they're like the principles of what you and I always used to do, like how we built websites. I think that some of those things are much more challenging now. We'll probably get into some of that, some of the reasons, but yeah, generally good. Let's start with PDFs for no particular reason. I just put this on the list because I just thought it was it's something we've come up against before, and we were having a client meeting with the school that we're working with, and they've got loads of PDFs for various things, lots of policies, prospectuses, things like that. And they're like, oh, the PDFs don't look good on the website. I'm like, why are you putting PDFs on the website anyway? And who is using these PDFs? Who uses PDFs today? What is the point in them? I'm not really sure. What are your thoughts on this? I know you've got strong opinions on PDFs.
God, yeah, I don't. So back in the day when I used to work in a school as a teacher, and I was involved with the internal systems that were used to sort of manage these policies and things like that. Everyone loves a PDF because they can type it out on Word and they can, do whatever they want with it, and then turn it into a PDF, and then it gets put somewhere. And what used to happen with us, with my school where we work, is someone would do this policy, and then they'd turn it into a PDF, and then they'd email it out to everybody. All staff used to get an email. We've updated the such and such a policy, and it's attached. Great. Why do I need that in my inbox? It should be at a location which we know where these things are. On an intranet, in a folder in Microsoft Teams or whatever you use these days, whatever the case may be. And then you get some people who obviously downloaded a copy, and I'll save a copy of that in my desktop or in my documents folder on my laptop. And then you got the other people, like generally older people, who was like, oh, print a copy out and put it in my drawer in my filing cabinet. And then what would happen is, like, a day later, oh, sorry, there was a typo on that, and we've changed this paragraph for the such and such policy. So we've attached it again for you, so it's updated. And then people would just ignore that because they're like, oh, I got that yesterday, so it's fine. I don't need that anymore. So now, you've got people with old policies in the drawers that are no longer valid because they've been overwritten. You've got people that have saved copies on their own computer that are no longer valid because they've been overwritten. And then you've got the actual policy somewhere, wherever that is, that. So it's just a complete and utter mess in that you can't actually keep track of what's what. So why are we using PDFs? Like, we've got these beautiful web pages. Why don't we just write the policies on the web page? And that is the source of truth. Like, that's where we should be storing these things. We don't need to send an email out to everyone. It lives at its URL, /policies/ whatever it is, privacy or whatever.
Yeah.
And it stays there, and it's updated there. And every time you look at it, that is the up-to-date piece of information. So that's my thoughts on it. Really frustrating from just taking me back 10 years to when I used to do that, and like the same situations happening here. I mean, the client's kind of tied a bit. It's difficult. They want to move forward with this, so there is a positive move from them.
Definitely. Yeah.
And then the other thing is they've got lots of like forms in PDFs. So medical consent forms for like trips and things. So, what happens is parent downloads it. They could perhaps fill it in online if they know what they're doing in a PDF reader thing, then resave it, or they then have to print it, write on it, take a photo of it, scan it, take it. It's just a mess. So, why aren't those like Microsoft forms that they can just collect the data in a spreadsheet, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So banishing PDFs is the goal, definitely. And I do think the client is on board with it, which is good. But it seems as though it could happen a lot quicker, I think. So
when could PDFs be useful? Do you know what I was just thinking? We actually make PDFs for things like proposals.
Yep.
Why do we do that?
Principally because we don't have another medium in which to build them. That's all. Like, they could easily be a web
block
page.
editor. Yeah, exactly.
But we don't. Yeah, we do, but we don't have that. I think people do sometimes like to print those off. I noticed when we went to that client meeting for that pitch a couple of weeks ago, our proposal was printed off on the desk. I saw it with the person that they were referring to it. So I think that's potentially when a PDF might be useful.
When it's going to be printed. Yeah.
But still, you could make that printable from the web page. And if it's not, I think a proposal is like, it's a very specific document to that client. It isn't public. It doesn't want a public URL, that sort of thing. So you'd have to start protecting all that as well, wouldn't you? I think that's the difference there, I think. But so, yeah, we do use PDFs for those things. But for things like this, which is public information that you want people to read, uploading a PDF is not the best way for them to read that on a phone, for example.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful web page that we've built responsively that works on all device sizes. That's the best way for them to consume information, which is exactly what a policy is. That's how they should be reading it, in my opinion.
I agree. And I think this idea of like embedding the PDF so that they can be viewed on the website is kind of ridiculous. That there's one example in this project. It's a prospectus, and it's done in like a landscape format. So two very kind of wide pages side by side, and you're supposed to like be able to flip through it on the web page, and it's just a disaster. Even at really large screen sizes, you can't read the text, and like on mobile, obviously, it's an absolute car crash. So
that's a classic example, isn't it? It's a beautifully designed brochure that, when printed out, will look gorgeous in your hand and work beautifully. But to consume that sort of information on the web,
Yeah.
it just doesn't work, you know. So I thought your
Yeah.
solution though was really good for that. What you suggested on that call? Do you want to tell people what you suggested and what we actually did?
Well, we had we used the block visibility plugin to kind of, so we had the embedded PDF visible at desktop with a button below it to download the PDF or just go to the file, and then on mobile I just hid the embedded version and
nice.
kept the button there. So it works because
Yeah.
you're just not going to want to view that on a mobile
No.
like embedded. So
Yeah,
I mean
this
that did work.
particular
They
one,
seemed really happy with that.
worth mentioning, this particular one was embedded with, like, was it Flip Stack or something? It's called, like a service
Snack.
that makes Flip Snack.
Yeah.
Sorry, right, okay. There's various ones around. Excuse me. So you kind of restricted as to what their embed gives you. So when we tried to make and this didn't work on mobile even, but when we tried to make it sort of wider so you could see it on a desktop, it kind of just sat inside the iframe and we had a lot of space on the outside, didn't you? It wasn't for playing very nicely. So it was an interesting thing. But yeah, I think they want to go forward. It's just convincing everyone in time and the job to actually do it as well.
Certainly the project lead is quite progressive in that way, but she's there's a lot of resistance within the school. They want to keep things. There's some very traditional people at the school, I think, who like things the way they are. Before we move on, just wanted to say a few hellos. Hello to Courtney, who doesn't seem to be enjoying the Bath Christmas markets. There's a thumbs down there. Good evening, Cameron. Hello, Tony from sunny but cold Aldermaston. It is sunny but cold here too right now. Nick has joined us. Nicholas has joined us. And I think that's it so far. If you are here, if you're lurking, do say hello. We do like to see who's here with us today. Next up, so just general progress, I guess, on this week. I think most of this is from you. I feel like this week for me has been more. I had a really good creative week last week where I was building things and doing fun stuff. This week has felt more like just putting things kind of together on a page and fixing all the bugs that arise as a result of those things going together on a page and things. So what are some of the things you've been working on?
It's been very similar for me, really. I think I don't feel like I've built an awful lot this week. I've been, tweaking things and changing things as you do. You go to build something and then, well, it doesn't really work like that, so let's try this way. And then actually I might have to just build that or change that or something like that. It's been a lot of that. One thing what we have been working with though is we have a post type called albums, photo albums, because they want to upload photo albums and then it wants to have an archive and you can click on an album and then scroll through the images of this album. So we've created a custom post type for that. And they want various things. So they want an archive of all of them. So we want to pull in, the featured image of a gallery. Sorry, of a photo album. They used to be called galleries. That's why I might get got confusing with the gallery block. Then show the name of the album over the top. And then what we'd like to do is to be able to show the number of images that are in the photo album. So the way in which we've decided to do this is that you go create a new photo album post, and we've pre-populated the editor with a group which has a paragraph in it, which will be the intro paragraph. And they can delete that if they don't want it, because some galleries just don't have any text. It's just, here are the images. But some have a little introduction paragraph, so they can put that in. And then below that, there's a gallery that's added to the screen, and they just go in and start adding the images. So that's what's on the page. And what we want to do is count the number of images that are in that gallery and display it on the archive as a little piece of text. So I think you've got a little icon, a little gallery icon that shows that it's a gallery, and it says like 10 images, 50 images, whatever it is. So it's like, well, how do we do that? So the approach we've gone for is kind of a fewfold. So the first one is we've used, instead of using our own custom block for this, which has its advantages still, and I'll come to that in a minute, because we've used a card block for the other things. We've decided to try and build this as a card in the editor, if that makes sense. So it's like a cover block, wrapped in a group, and then we've got the group link into the post. Then we've got the post title in the cover block, and then we've got an icon block using the little icon block plugin that I think from Nick Diego. Is that from Nick Diego? Might be.
Yep.
And then we've got a paragraph of text, which is like the 5 images, 10 images, whatever it is. But obviously that needs to be dynamic because it needs to pull in the actual number of images from the gallery. So the way in which I've done that is when you hit save on a gallery post, it will count the number of images in your gallery by getting the content of the post and parsing the blocks and so forth. And it will save that as a piece of metadata against the post. And then what we do is we've used block bindings, which is pretty cool, actually, isn't it? That little attributes thing, and you click plus and you can bind some data. We've used block bindings to bind that value to that paragraph. So it will say like, the number of images in the post. So that's quite nice. And then the other cool thing which we did is we wanted on the actual single gallery page, we wanted underneath each image to say like image 1 of 10, 2 of 10, 3 of 10, 4 of 10, 5 of 10. So you know where you are in the gallery when you're scrolling down the page. So the way in which we've done that is I have added data attributes to each of the figure elements which wraps the image. And I've added the current image number, and I've added the total image number to each element. And then Keith's gone in and used CSS after elements, not elements, pseudo elements.
Pseudo elements, yeah.
To add that data underneath as a pseudo element and reading the values which you can in CSS from the attributes that are on that particular block or that.
Element. If you didn't know that, in CSS there is an attribute function, ATTR, and then open brackets, and you can put the value of any data attribute. In fact, any attribute, and you can output that using the content property. Of a pseudo element. So that's pretty cool. So I've got like WP block image after content, and then the content is attribute data image current / attribute data image total. And it
works pretty well, doesn't it?
Yeah.
We wanted to try and do it with actual markup, but it would be really difficult. The search replace or regex to find would be very difficult, and it's also very difficult when you're rendering the block content to know which number of images you'll be in. So it was much easier to do it this way than it was to sort of add some actual markup on the page.
Yeah, it would have been nice, wouldn't it, if instead of actually using a gallery block, we could have used a query loop block to query the images attached to a gallery or something. I don't know how we would have done it, but I kind of want that ability to loop through items and add things like we did. Like for the card, like I could add that current image number, total image number, then maybe like an underline using a divider, and I could style them all differently. That would have been much nicer. But yeah, technically more tricky,
difficult. Yeah. I think stuff like those data attributes though that I've added, I'd like to see those on the core block. This is, I'm in the gallery, this is image 1 of whatever in the gallery, and set as data attributes, because you can do, like, people can do so much with that information then. And it seems, I don't know, I mean, I know it's more to maintain when you're going forward for the core team to maintain something that's on the block. But I just think everyone might be doing it their own way rather than just putting this information on those. Like, we've always done this in the past, haven't we, when we've been doing repeater fields. We've added like the total number of things that are inside on the parent element, so you can style it based on how many there are. For example, if it's an odd number or an even number or all that sort of stuff. Those little helper classes, they're so useful, and I'd love to see core do that more. Even if it's data attributes, because they make sense. It's just data that we want to store about this thing on the page. But unfortunately, they don't. But anyway,
it's a lot of extra data that would be whizzing around the internet. So that's the only thing I'd say about and the maintainability, like you say.
I get that. I do get that. Yeah. If you want to know how I did the data attributes, I did a post. I think it's called a post on Blue Sky, which it's not hard. It was one function that was, I don't know, 20 odd lines. So you can have a look at my Blue Sky handle. I'm at markwilkinson.dev, and you'll see it on there.
Yeah.
Give us a follow while you're there. Why not? So yeah. So that was my stuff this week. It was quite nice to use the block editor. One downside to all this though is we then created was it an overridable? Yeah, it was a synced overridable pattern for this gallery card, so we could use it inside other query loops, basically.
Yep.
And it was synced overridable, so that if we decide to change the look and feel of this card in the future, change the tint on the cover block, or move the text to the top, or whatever that might be, make the text bigger, smaller, different color, we could do that. But one of the restrictions of that is that you can't change settings on individual cards then that are set. And a great example of that is we've set the cover image to be, I think it was a square, so like a 1:1 aspect ratio. And then we wanted to put that somewhere else on the site, but because it's a synced to overridable pattern, you can't then change the aspect ratio of the card because the setting isn't available to you. All I can do is change the image. I can't actually change the aspect ratio. Now, what we did in this instance is detach it from the synced to overridable pattern, set it to 16:9, and then we use it that way. But that defeats the object because it's now out of sync. So if we change the pattern, it won't change those individual elements. And it's stuff like that the block editor is still missing. Like that's where our card block was really good, wasn't it? Like we can put it inside a query loop, we can give some settings, and we can change those settings on every instance of where that card is used. That was really, really useful. But in this instance, it's just missing those little things.
Yeah, the overrides are still really limited, aren't they? I came across this actually today as well. I was building a pattern called event row, I called it, and it's an image. Beside that is the event title and the event date, and beside that, on the far side is just an arrow icon, and the whole thing is wrapped in a group. And again, thank you, Nick Diego, because we're using all your plugins. I can't remember what it's called, but it's the plugin of his that lets you link groups.
Enable link group, I think it's called. It's not that, group link.
I think that's what it's called. Which is really nice, and it works as a pattern, but it doesn't work as a synced overridable pattern because that isn't overridable, that link. So I've got this pattern now that I really want to lock down that I can't. And it's quite frustrating. So I used it a few times earlier and I was like, okay, yeah, that's good. And then I realized I'd made some mistakes or I wanted to optimize it. And I was like, I better get this bang on right now before it's used all across this website because I can't edit this ever again. Once it's published. So it's really that stuff is frustrating. I wonder if there's any plans in the works to I don't know, just increase the number of things that can be overridden. Because you kind of want access to almost everything, don't you? Like,
it feels like, I don't know, 6 to 12 months ago, we were sort of like 75% there. The block editor, it was good and so forth, but there was still like fundamental things that we couldn't do, so it was difficult. Now it feels like we're like 85 to 90% there. Like it's very good. There's lots of things we can do, like bindings and things like that, and sync to overridable patterns and so forth. But it's just that last 10% it's so disappointing because like you get so far down the line, you're like, oh yeah, I've done that and it's synced and it works but I can't do that, can I? Which is really important. So I don't know. I'm torn. I like it. I like a lot of what it does now, and I actually enjoy using it a lot of the time. But it just disappoints me so much that like it's missing these fundamental things for the stuff that we believe in, like in the sites that we create. I think
it'd be interesting to come up with a list of those things.
Yeah,
like the 5 things that we would love to be added. That would really like improve things so much. Not necessarily low hanging fruit because it could be technically very difficult to achieve them, but yeah, it'd be interesting. Like layouts for me, like just creating like basic layouts. Like we've kind of got something that is sort of a Flexbox container, but the columns block, but doesn't actually let you do all the things that Flexbox allows you to do. Stuff like that, and then we've got a grid kind of thing that doesn't really let you do all the things that grid allows you to do. And just so many times I'm just trying to do what I think are kind of simple layouts and I'm just banging my head against a wall. So that would be one for me. Responsive controls probably would have to sneak in there somewhere.
Some sort of responsive stuff. I have seen murmurings that that's possible, with the sort of preview a button in the corner where you can preview something on a mobile. And you know, that's there. Could we use that when you press that? You're in the different context, and then the things you set. Possibly, we'll see. We'll see if it gets there eventually. But yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
So that was my week building stuff. Patterns, styles, variations we've got on the list. What do we mean?
I can't remember. So we were talking about this earlier, weren't we? And I can't remember what the kind of use case was.
I'll explain what I think this is about. So you created an excellent little stat counter style for the paragraph block. So the idea being is you can put a paragraph, you can put a number in your paragraph, any number at all. You can click the style that says this is a counter, and then on the front end, when the page loads or when that block is on screen, it will count up to the top number that you've got. So it's like a little animation type thing. Really cool, really good thing. So I was looking last night at making this like a plugin that we could use more and more and more.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things that you don't know what to do. Should I do this as a pattern? Should I do this as a block style, or should I do this as a variation? And I'm not sure what the best way of doing it is. So I ended up last night getting towards a block variation. So I have a variation of the paragraph block called stat counter. And in the block inserter list, it's there called stat counter. It's not a paragraph, you know, it's to the user, it says stat counter. So you click that, then you drop that on the page, and that automatically adds the correct attribute that we're using on the front end to do various things. And it also sets the attribute, which means that I can put a little box on the right that says how fast should this counter count up, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But that could easily have been a pattern that does the same thing. It wouldn't have had the sort of option on the side to change the speed of it, but I don't know whether that's actually very, very important to us, to be honest.
Yeah, but it could be for other things.
Yeah, and it could easily be a style, you know, just a block style like we've got now. So it's just difficult to know what the best solution is with these things. But I'm not really sure about the pros and cons yet, so we need to delve into that a bit further, I think.
I guess one... So block styles, essentially you're just adding a class. And I think with block styles, it's useful if it's something you want to be able to switch between. So like...
Yeah.
You have a button and you're like, oh, no, that doesn't look right here. Let me try the secondary style or the tertiary style or whatever. I think that makes a lot of sense. We're using them in places where I think we probably shouldn't, like turning things into sliders. Potentially.
But you could argue that is a style. Like if it's a gallery,
you could.
Like this is the style of gallery I want. It's a slider. I don't think that's particularly wrong. I think
styles are very generic
about it. Sorry.
Styles a very generic word. You could like it could encompass a lot of things, including variations and
that's true.
And patterns.
But having thought about it, I'm not sure whether the block style is the right approach for a counter. But I mean, it is a style. Like it does work. It's just that a user would be like, right, I want to add a counter to this page. What do I do? And at the moment, they have to add a paragraph, and then they see the counter style.
Yeah.
Whereas a variation, they can just go search for stat or counter, and then it'll actually show them that block. I know it's a paragraph, but they'll see it. Yeah. So I think that's probably slightly better in that instance.
And being able to add those meta fields, is really beneficial because they might not apply to some styles and they do apply to others. So that maybe variations is the place to go then.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's definitely another kind of tool in our arsenal, isn't it? Or in our toolbox.
Because I started off with the paragraph block, adding a toggle. What I wanted to do was to put this speed input in, so you could put in the number of milliseconds that it should take to count from 0 to whatever number that you've added.
Yeah.
So I put that on there, and I was like, hang on, that shows now on the side of every paragraph block on the website.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, isn't a problem, but it's just just what's it there? It doesn't make sense, does it? So then I thought, well, I'll add, what I'd like to do is to be able to say, if they've clicked the style that you'd already created, counter, show that box. And if they've not, that style's not active, hide that box. Apparently, that's either very difficult or impossible to do. So I ditched that idea and thought, well, I could have a toggle at least, so I don't have the input. It's just a toggle that says, turn on the stats, make this into a stat block or whatever.
Yeah.
I got that working, so you could toggle it on, the thing showed, toggle it off, the thing hidden. But again, it's still there for every paragraph. So then I came up with the idea of the block variation, because you can set the attributes when the block is dropped on the page, and then that stuff shows only when those attributes are present.
Yeah.
So therefore, they don't show on a normal paragraph because it doesn't have the attributes that this variation has, which was good. So I think that's probably the right way to go in this instance, but it's not the right way for every instance, I'm sure. I think block styles are certainly extremely good for most things.
The kind of penny drop moment for me about the variations was being able to pre-select the attributes.
Yeah.
So obviously for a paragraph block, well, I was going to say that's not very useful. Maybe it's very useful in a certain circumstance. But the thing that came to mind for us, wasn't it, was the query loop. So why would we not have a galleries loop and a news loop and a pages loop and a whatever other post types? So the query loop is pre-populated with the parameters that you want, like the correct post type and everything like that, and that maybe the number and whatever.
I think that's a good idea.
And that's way more accessible for the site owner, the editor of a page, because what the hell is a query loop? What does that mean?
I want to show latest news, so I've got to put a query loop in. Doesn't make sense to them.
You're going to search for latest news, and you're going to find a variation, and that's going to be your news variation. You don't need to fiddle with it. It just kind of comes out of the box. I think that could be really, really, really useful.
I think where the patterns versus styles versus variations came in for me was, I think, if let's say you wanted to put a notice on the screen, so you can use a paragraph block. So you type a sentence out and you want it to be a notice. So you might want to make it like a red border for a warning or a green border for a positive notice or something like that. Make the text size a bit bigger. You could use a style for that. So you could put the paragraph on and just click a style and it goes the right border. Everything's set, isn't it? Because the style just adds a CSS and you've styled it. That would work perfectly well. You could also save it as a pattern. Yeah, so you could set it up, save it as a pattern, then they drop it on the page and they're free to change it, but it's all there. But you could also do it as a variation. So you could just preset those things in a variation. So it's that where I'm not sure which one is the best one to do, where it kind of works for them all, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I guess depends on the use case, but
it does. Yeah, and really interesting though. But yeah, fun to play with it. And that little. So we're thinking of turning that little counter system, and it is super simple, into a plugin that we're going to use going forward. We'd also want to release that for other people for free, because it's there's no way you can charge for something like that. And the question is, where do we put that plugin these days? I think it's more mini protest than anything else, but I am loath to put it on Matt's personal website.
Me too.
And so I'd like to avoid that, just out of principle. But then the question becomes, A, where does that code live? B, how do people update it? And C, how do people find it? I think the obvious answer to A is probably GitHub.
Yes.
The answers to the other two are not obvious to me. Do you have any thoughts or ideas around updates and discoverability?
Well, no, really. But updates is a solved problem. Like you can update plugins in WordPress without using WordPress.org. We do it for Job Relay and RecPress.
Mm-hmm.
I know they're slightly different because they're subscribed products and they have a license and it's checks and it's going on. But that system would presumably use for products that don't have those licenses, as in it just always passes the check, doesn't it? And says, yes, you can update. Here we go. So that's But I think your question
like
is,
EDD.
Yeah, is it up to us to do that and host that, or is there something out there that will do that for us that isn't WordPress.org? I know other people have done this, like WP Engine have done this, haven't they? I don't know how they do it. So they've had to do this themselves for their own plugins.
Yeah.
So are they hosting them? Where do you host them? How does that work? So I think it's more of a question of learning how to do it rather than the fact that it's not possible, if that makes sense.
Mm.
And I haven't come to any conclusions on that yet.
There's a GitHub updater plugin, I think, which if you have the correct headers in your plugin, I'm probably talking rubbish, but I think something along the lines of this. If you've got the correct headers, GitHub updater can work. So if you've got that installed in your plugin and you can update plugins directly from GitHub.
But I don't want to rely on another plugin
I don't either.
being installed to be able to
agree.
update my plugin.
I agree. That's not a method that I'm really massively keen on.
No.
And it feels very niche, very developer-y rather than kind of user-friendly.
Yeah.
So I'm not so keen on that. So I'm leaning towards something like EDD just on our own website. I think that's fine.
Yeah, maybe that's the best way.
And then so the second bit is discoverability. How are people going to find this? Because obviously people search for stuff directly. Whenever I was searching for a counter plugin, I searched directly in the website in WP admin.
Yeah.
Then I didn't. I found a few things, tried a few things. Then I think I just did a Google search.
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that. Is there any services that are offering what you want is like an aggregator, like pull in all the WordPress plugins from different sources type thing, and then
well, that's what I was thinking.
Something in WordPress that extends the normal backend search for a plugin to include all the stuff from the aggregator as well. You know what I mean? So you can find it all.
And then I thought that sounds great. Who's policing it?
Yeah.
How are we going to stop it being full of absolute garbage? Who's moderating comments? Who's doing plugin reviews? Who's stopping all the kind of security issues? I don't know. And that's what's kind of sad about the current state of affairs in a way. Like the fact that repo has been weaponized, but it's so tragic because it's so important for this project. I agree. There's integrity there.
But what you don't want to get into a situation is like we don't want to put it on Matt's personal website, but also we shouldn't be wanting to put it on Keith's personal website or on Mark's personal website or on High Rise Digital's personal website. Sounds to me like we want something that is owned by everybody, the WordPress ecosystem and the community. Yeah. So it can't be weaponized because everyone owns it. I don't know how we do that, but that's what I think would be good.
That's what I thought .org was.
So did I until all this came out, but it clearly isn't because he's openly stated it's his website. So
I'm don't want to get into it too much. I'm not actually sure that Matt believes that. I think he's maybe using that in this legal battle. I'm gonna give him the benefit of the doubt and say that I think he genuinely wanted it to be as open as we all wanted it to be, but because of this fight with WP Engine, he's changed his tune to suit his case, his legal case. That would be the kind interpretation, I think.
I just think if you were a business right now that was, you're just finishing off your big product, your plugin that you've made, would you still put that on WordPress.org today? And I'm not sure the answer to that is yes, knowing what's happened to some of the most popular and plugins. Yeah. And that could easily happen to yours with that you can't do anything about it. I think you'd probably say no, but I don't know.
Yeah. I think having it on our site and hopefully people find it just by Google search or by us telling people about it. I think that's the way it should go until things change.
The good listeners and watchers of WP Café will spread the word for us.
Yeah.
Not that it really matters whether anyone uses it or not, to be quite honest. But...
yeah, I just thought that was interesting that there isn't an alternative, and it would be really hard. It's almost the same kind of deal as like just forking WordPress. Yes, it's possible, but it's a big job. Yeah, right. I think you wanted is this a rant, Mark? This last point,
rant isn't
Black Friday pricing. Are we into?
I don't know about you, everyone listening, but like Black Friday, it kind of annoys me. Like all these offers that just come in at once, and it's like, why have you suddenly decided that you're going to give me
does my head
30%
in.
off. Like I just don't understand it, and because for me it just devalues your price for the rest of the year. Like why would I buy a product on the 1st of October? Like why would I go and buy this plugin that I want on the 1st of October? Because I literally know that if I wait 6 weeks, you're going to give it me for like 50% off. So it just, I don't know. That's what I don't like about it. And this kind of came up because I saw a tweet. Let me just find it in my inbox, actually. Here it is. This was from Barn2 about a new cancellation policy. It's kind of slightly off piece, but it's kind of linked to the same sort of thing. A new cancellation policy, or what? Not policy. What's the word they look at? Like
Process,
funneling you through the cancellation process type thing. And it was like a 4-step process. And I immediately thought, why have we got a 4-step process to cancel something? Like, anyway, so that's fine. So the first page, you clicked on cancel, and then the first screen was like, tell me why you're cancelling. I mean, okay, that's fine. You might want to know. That's fine. So then you click on the next screen. So you've said why you don't want to cancel. And then the next screen says, oh, but what about all these benefits that you're missing? Like you're going to miss out on the locked-in price. You're going to miss out on all this. So at this point, I can click keep current plan. I can say, no, you're right, actually. I'd quite like to keep it, actually. That's fine. But if I say no and I still want to cancel, I then get to the next screen and it's like, oh, one more thing just before you cancel. Would you like 30% off it? Would you keep it then? So it gives me this 30% off price. At this point, I'm like, hang on a minute. I've just been paying $200 a year, and now you're offering it me for like whatever 30% off that is. I can't work out my head. I just feel really annoyed at that point that you're now going to give this me for cheaper. Why didn't I do this last year? Do you know what I mean? So I think that's really weird. And it's the same with Black Friday deals, Why are we suddenly offering all this money off things? And I think there's a product owner, pricing's like really difficult, but I just think price your product based on what is fair for you and your customers and provides value. And then you shouldn't really need to offer discounts on it.
Yeah.
But I must be wrong because everybody does this. So I'm open to being wrong.
I've seen the old posts though about people, I think it was in the WordPress space, where Black Friday offers basically did nothing. Like absolutely zero. And if you did the maths, the little bump in sales did not compensate for the loss of like the sale price. And I'm just like, well, why? I don't understand why you do that at all. Like it doesn't. Yeah, it just didn't make any. It doesn't make any sense to me, really.
I suppose it's an excuse is the wrong word, but it's an excuse to gain a bit of hype around the product. Look, we've got this offer, and people might share it and so on. But then, like you said, the numbers don't stack up, and it doesn't build any more sales. Then what's the point? But it must, like I say, I must be wrong. It must build sales.
I think, it'd be interesting to know about the WordPress space in particular, because I can see how it works for consumer goods, and I can see how it kind of came about. It's like, what it was a pre-Christmas thing, wasn't it? Really, like everyone's doing their shopping for Christmas presents. I think that's how it started. And it was like one of the most popular weekends for like buying stuff in the run up to Christmas. It could be Thanksgiving. Yeah. Yeah, which is today. Happy Thanksgiving. Today?
Is it today?
Or yesterday. Yeah, no, I don't know. And I don't know. I just bought something. I bought that new monitor. That was on a Black Friday price, and I deliberately waited.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So is it actually a Black Friday? So I'm sat there thinking, is this actually a Black Friday offer, or are you just overcharging me for the rest of the year so that you can give this offer?
Yeah.
I don't know. Courtney says, thank you. She says, the agency I work for previously will cancel their Gravity forms every year and rebuy it at 50% off with Black Friday.
Wow.
That's my point.
Stingy. That is proper stingy. How much are they saving? Honestly. It's like $250 a year for like an agency license.
But I'm even more stingy because I had this golf insurance package. Basically, so if you whack a shot and kill someone, you're kind of insured or you injure them, whatever. And it was like, it came up as this offer. It's a product that a lot of people buy. And it was like $26.99 for the year. This was like the first time I bought it. $26.99 for the year. You got like 12 free golf balls, and the golf balls that they were giving were worth like 15 quid. So it's like, it's pretty much a no-brainer. You know, get these. I buy golf balls, and it made sense. Comes to renew it, and it's $39.99 a year with no offers. So I was like, why would I do that? I'm just going to cancel it and then sign up again.
Yeah.
I don't understand why they'd have these, you know, what's your price? And let's just stick to the price.
Yeah, I generally don't like sales, and I generally don't like discounts. You know, it's just, I don't know, it just feels a bit weird and a bit gross. Like you say, like if you're happy to sell it at that, why are you selling it for 30% more the rest of the time? I don't know. I find it really bizarre. I really do.
I'm the same, but.
And it leaves a really nasty, that original example, I'm not having a go at Born 2 here, but whenever I've been on the receiving end of that kind of exit discount, it feels gross. I don't like it. And, you know, that idea, like, you've come to the end of your broadband contract, and what you need to do is go to your current broadband provider and say, I'm leaving, what can you do for me? It's like, I shouldn't have to do that.
No.
As a customer, like, it just feels like if I don't take action, you're going to fleece me. That's kind of how that feels to me, and I don't like it. So yeah, I won't be doing that to other people.
Clearly, they can offer that product at 30% off, because that's what they're doing. And when I say cancel, so just why am I not getting that now? You know, why am I being taken advantage of because I didn't press that I want to cancel button? And
back to WordPress, are people really? Well, obviously, Courtney's just said they are. Or I was going to say, are people really waiting for Black Friday to buy a plugin?
Yeah.
Like, that's mental.
Yeah. No, I hear people like complaining of buying, you know, of WooCommerce is a great example. People like genuinely have the reasons that, like, oh, I don't like WooCommerce because you've got to buy all the extensions at $20 a pop, you know, and they might need 10. That's $200 a year to run your store. It's like, it's absolutely peanuts if it does the job. So, you know, but they really care about it, you know.
Yeah, it's weird.
But
I don't know.
Anyway, we won't be having a Black Friday sale. So if you were waiting for that, not that you were.
Yeah, Job Relay and WordPress are the same price that they are always for everybody.
Yeah.
All year round. So yeah. Let's wrap it up there. We've done a good chunk of time today. We're nearly at the 50-minute mark. Thanks for sticking with us, folks. Thanks for joining us today. It's always a pleasure to have you watching and listening along. As always, just click the little thumbs up. Go on, just before you go, give us a little thumbs up. And if you do want to watch more content like this in the future or listen to it on a podcast, please do consider subscribing to the show. We will be back on Friday next week, I believe. Quick calendar check, Mark. Are we all good for Friday next week? I believe we are. Yeah. So Friday 1:30 in the afternoon, British time, and we will hopefully see you then.
Bye-bye.